Catholic Relief Services, the International Relief and Development Agency of the U.S. Catholic Church, has released its most pressing humanitarian cases to watch in 2024. For an estimated 360 million people across the globe, these crises reflect deprivation, loss, and disruption of their lives that will have a ripple effect for years to come, all because of circumstances beyond their control. CRS says only 20% of the $55 billion financial need is being met, with millions of people falling through the cracks. In its 8 global humanitarian crises to watch in 2024, Catholic Relief Services puts the war-torn countries at the top of the list, Gaza number 1 and Ukraine number 2. The food crisis in East Africa is number 3. In Somalia alone, half of all children are expected to be acutely malnourished this year. Escalating gang violence and climate change effects in Central America put it at number 4, with economic collapse driving large numbers to flee. Earthquake destruction and displacement in Afghanistan ranks it as number 5. Fighting in Sudan has destroyed homes, businesses, and schools. It is number 6, as more than half of its country's population needs humanitarian assistance. Conflict and violence combined with a food crisis in the Central Sahel puts this African region at number 7. And a global uptick in preventable diseases, including measles, tuberculosis, and malaria, place climate change-induced disease spread at number 8. We begin our in-depth focus on these humanitarian crises with a look at the dire situations in the war zones of Gaza and Ukraine. Roselle Reyes has our report.
Millions of people displaced from their homes. Some continue to live in war zones, while others evacuate and seek shelter elsewhere, often lacking food and water. These are the humanitarian costs of war, devastating both Gaza and Ukraine.
My house was bombed, and I fled here without bringing anything with me, not even money. We need food, bread, and blankets. It's winter, and I came here without anything, not even spare clothes.
Since the start of the war in October, after Hamas terrorists brutally killed more than 1,200 Israelis on October 7, and Israel struck back with airstrikes against Hamas in Gaza, a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza has escalated, with Palestinian civilians caught in the middle. Catholic Relief Services, the official international humanitarian agency of the Catholic community in the United States, designates Gaza as number 1 on the list of global humanitarian crises to watch in 2024.
We've done some food commodities, some shelter supplies, some hygiene products, and then they were checked, verified, and then they'd move on. And we've assisted over 100,000 different people there, 22,000 families, and doing about 800 or 1,000 a day in that area.
CRS President and CEO Sean Callahan was just in Gaza last week to assess the situation. According to CRS figures, nearly 2 million people, about 85% of Gaza's population, have been displaced. Many have crowded into schools, churches, hospitals, homes, and shelters, but thousands are living outside without safe shelter. Callahan explains that a lot more work needs to be done as more and more people fleeing from fighting in the city of Khan Yunis are headed towards the border of Egypt seeking refuge.
You are seeing, some of these really beautiful families that are together, but you also see that displacement and then trying to take care of those children during this time where you can't trust the food, the water, and you don't have the proper medicines. And it's particularly poignant for women who are pre and postnatal, women who are ready to give birth, and then women who have given birth and trying to take care of their newborns when they're not getting adequate nutrition.
The latest Integrated Food Security and Nutrition Phase Classification, or IPC report, states that more than 90% of the population in Gaza is facing crisis levels of food insecurity, and warns that level of hunger could lead to famine in as little as 3 months. Children, especially young ones, are especially at risk from disease and malnutrition. Living in a tent with her family, this mother with a 4-month-old baby is forced to feed her baby ground-up rice and biscuits because they could not find or afford to buy baby formula.
Because there is no milk, and we no longer buy milk, since 2.5 months ago we started feeding her. She is supposed to be forbidden from eating until she is 6 months old, but because there is no milk and the child is hungry, there is no alternative.
Other organizations, such as the World Food Program, provide meals and deliver food to as many people as possible. So far, they have been able to feed around 1.4 million people.
There are people starving in areas, and we are not able to give basic food for. The needs are rising faster than we are able to respond. We need to be able to bring in more supplies, and we need safe access to reach people everywhere in Gaza, not just those who are close to the borders. We need a long-lasting ceasefire to stop the suffering.
Honestly, I was very scared. I screamed so much. I've never screamed like I did this morning.
In Ukraine, attacks continue as the almost 2-year war rages on. Coupled with a bitter winter, there is an urgent need for life-saving humanitarian aid.
14.6 million people, 40% of the population in Ukraine will need humanitarian aid. 4 million people are internally displaced. That's in addition to those who are externally displaced.
According to a UN report, more than 3 million people are living in the middle of war zones. In Donetsk and Kharkiv regions, families live in damaged houses with no piped water, gas, or electricity.
Unfortunately, the war, continues, and every day means, unfortunately, more damaged infrastructure, more destroyed homes, more lives that are being pulled apart.
This puts Ukraine at number 2 on the list of Catholic Relief Services crisis to watch.
At the beginning were very basic needs, ensuring that people have access to a place to live, whether for a few days or sometimes a few months or longer, access to hot meals, food packages, hygiene items, providing cash assistance to households.
CRS Partnership Coordinator Eric Heinonen works with the Caritas organizations in Ukraine to provide aid both in the country and in neighboring countries hosting refugees.
The Caritas organizations in neighboring countries like Romania and Poland and Hungary and Slovakia and Moldova are really focused on how can they help refugees integrate to the degree that they want to and just get to a level of stability to be self-sustaining where they are.
So far, CRS and the Caritas organizations have helped a combined total of 3 million people.
Look.
The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, recently spent a week in Ukraine. After seeing firsthand the continued toll the war has on Ukraine, he said he worries that Ukraine is being forgotten as other global crises take the spotlight.
Look at the headlines. Sometimes you cannot find Ukraine anymore. It means that there is less attention, less resources will be allocated to help the people, and more suffering for the people that remain here caught in this senseless war.
Roselle Reyes, EWTN News in Depth.